things are like, right, I mean, under the, umbrella, umbrella thing, like writing for media, radio, and television, wherein I had discussed about radio and its potential and introduction. And even I discussed about radio as a medium of mass communication, radio as a medium of mass communication, even characteristics of radio medium and substance of radio programming. So the many things, we had discussed in the last class, even production techniques also had discussed in the classes, even writing for radio, how we are supposed to, write a script for radio. Even I had discussed and how we can be a good script writer for the radio. Even I had discussed what are the things and techniques and what are the prerequisites you are supposed to, follow when you are, writing a script for radio, and limitations of radio medium and radio scripting and art of the imagination. Even, I discussed, much and more, much and more things in the last session. Even types of programs as seminary, how radio programs are being, transmitted by All India Radio. This is when I discussed about, and radio in the service of the public, how the radio is transmitting and how radio is beneficiary and beneficial for the public. Even I discussed about how documentaries, interviews, and current affairs and talks and public service announcements and even radio for entertainment, radio play and sports and special events. Even I discussed, these are the things, in the last session. I mean, serials adaptation, how, serials are being, transmitted, are being, are being broadcasted, and adaptation of novels and music programs, and in how, through Ivavani, how radio is, broadcasting such and such, things for the students were in the place, were in our place, and radio for open learning, how you are, pursuing your education through open university, how, radio is going to be very useful for open learning. Even I had discussed about, and the perspective of the air broadcasting and radio for adult literacy, even I had discussed in the last class. These were the things, I had discussed in the last class. Even I had discussed about essential production techniques, adapting for radio, the spoken word, wherein I had discussed about writing for the ear, focusing and recentering, and then the spoken language, the sound of normal speech, informal words, contractions, how contractions are supposed to be avoided, wherein you are a speaker in the radio, the teller of the radio, because I could not do that, I couldn't do that. You are not supposed to make use all such, sentences in radio broadcasting. And simple sentences are supposed to be used, incomplete sentences, dialogue and character. So these were the things I had discussed in the last class. That's what I wanted to recap you. What things, we had discussed in the last class. Now, I would like to commence, with a narration. Even I had given, few things about the narration about radio. How narrative part in radio is going to be, much and more useful for the broadcast, for the broadcasting, for broadcasting the program on radio. That is what I'm supposed to, speak it on today. So narration part, I'm speaking here, my dear students. You just, you can also, if you have a book, you can, open it with you, because so I'm going to tell you what is what in the textbook, and I'm going to explore more and more along with my own perspectives after reading, all such things. I would, share. Meantime, my presentation.
Okay, excuse me, sir, because I think, how can
Yeah,
I say, the here, like, we have DCE general principles. I think this discussion is concerned to the coordinator of the
okay.
program. So we have DCE principle of writing, feature short stories.
Uh,
But how can I
yeah,
say?
this I'll do it now today.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm asking,
Those
I'm not
concepts
even
will be dealt
seeing
today now.
writing for radio. I'm not even able to see that in here on the platform. I'm not able to find that one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it is there in the book. Even I'll discuss, because I'll discuss all such things
yeah,
in today's presentation.
yeah. You
Shall I
said that in
proceed?
the book. We have not. I cannot even see the books. That's
It's
the
okay, because
problem.
I'll try to make you understand what is what,
Okay,
the concepts
okay. No
are.
problem. No problem.
You just, keep it alert. You keep, attentive, be attentive, like keep your, self attended. I mean, attentive. I'll definitely make you understand. I'll try to make you understand.
Okay, 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 okay. No problem, sir.
Shall I proceed? Shall I proceed?
Yes, 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 yes. You can. You
Oh,
can. please.
Today I'm going to give a more
Yes, I'm composite, sir.
yeah. Hello. Okay. Okay. The things are
We
clear
come for
because
this side.
hello. Okay, the things are very much crystal clear here. I'm going to give more, discussion on today. Narrative part has, one of my students here discussing about feature writing and how to write children, something, writing like that. This will be discussed today because the sessions, are fixed today because are set today. That's the narration part I'm discussing today because let me begin the narration. How narration plays an important part in India because the use of narration because you must be knowing the narrative part how things are going to put it in the narrative part. The use of narration in film and television has receded sharply because in the visual form it is not necessarily describe what is happening. Narration, therefore, is still the widest use in radio. Even must be hearing the radio. This section will review the contributions that narration can make, the types of narration and some rules for their use, the function of narration I'm talking about now. The major function of narration is that conveys informations to an audience more economically than dialogue. Because if you are giving more platform for the dialogue, that would consume the time. Instead of giving more and more, platform and creating platform for the dialogue to make, to speak. So you can, if you do it narrative, because it would be more economic even than the dialogue. There are main three functions of narration. They are the narration is first and foremost can provide exposition. That exposition is what it can look backward and provide information about the past. It will not be possible where in the dialogue in any other place because I think that I'm a narrator. I'm going to bring forth certain things which has happened in the past to the present to the audience. Even I'm going to bring back certain incidents from the past, from the future. Even I will be talking present as a lone speaker. That is what narrative part is very economical when compared to other things because the narrative part is what it's an exposition because I'm going to explore so many things as a narrator all alone. Similarly, and the second part of it, it provides an information or interpretation through narration, can reinforce the message and thereby enhance the impact of the situation. Because if you are a good narrator, if you are narrating a program in a radio, it is you are giving an information, you are providing information or interpretation, even you are going to explain it, what the thing is about through narration, because through your technique of the narrative part can reinforce the message you're going to reinforce because you are reinforcing the message and thereby enhance the impact of the subject. You are going to tell you the what the the situation is all about, the circumstance is all about. That is what narrative is a wonderful technique which is used very much in radio. And thirdly, the first part is I told you about the exposition part. The second part is it reinforces the impact of the situation that I told you. The thirdly, it's a writer's own comment because the one who is speaking, who is who is commentary is this commentary in the sense he is narrating the whole of it on the issue, the particular issue, and even besides the narration can have a filtering effect by capsuling incident because you cannot take all the incidents. You should filter it. You filter the effect and capsuling one by one incident, situations, and dramatizations which is presented in a straight way, can result being excessive and unbearable because you are going to make it short. You are going to bring all such and things, and you are going to put it in your narration part. That is what filtering function is very much. That is what the well, even for an example, it is there in the book that you can read it in the book when you get the book, or else I would definitely read that very example now at the end of the great war between the royal families because Mahabharata, in my place, for Hindus, it's a holy book where Peter Brook is a foreign director, the Western director, who directed the very, Mahabharata, which is a holy book. So, which is a holy book. So, there is an incident of Mahabharata. This is how, is going to narrate it, the one who is narrating, because at the end of the great war between the royal families in Mahabharata, when the Kauravas are completely routed and with Duryodhana unfairly defeated in battle, Ashwathaman, a warrior in Kaurava army, goes out night and sets the Pandava camp on fire. The slaughter of the sleeping Pandavas is a brutal episode full of blood and gore. Instead of defending the actual incident, because you cannot, depict the actual incident, Brooke, what he said, what he did in his narrative, technique, like Ashwathaman to confess his crime to a dying Duryodhana in the battlefield. This way, aware of the incident, at one remove and has spared the actual violence. Because instead of expending all such incidents, because Ashwathaman came to Duryodhana who is very much who is about to die, because was there was very sharp. The war, the battle between Bhima and Duryodhana occurred, and he was about to die because Duryodhana is on the deathbed, where Ashwathaman came to him and he was explaining about how things happened. This is the narrative part. This is how the listeners listen to it, and they got to know what happening through his narration of Ashwathaman from the director perspective. The types of narration, because when you're narrating, there are three kinds of narration: first person, second person, and third person. So I think when you're speaking about something, third person would be the wonderful, because third person narration would be, first and second and third person would be the simplest and the most common. So this is also been the most traditional type of narration, because third person would be a better, because you cannot make use of first person and second person. When you are making use of first and second person, it would be like something something what we call as arbitrary, something like that. Is what this has been the most traditional type of narration, in which the narrator is not involved in the actions, because the narrator is not involved in the actions, because you are speaking as if you are mentioning the third person, because narrations like what the third person is, the narration is the most common. That is what the very slide which speaks about how narration plays an important role here. The written matter of a feature or a document is read out by two narrators, male and female. That is what this is all about. Then radio's lack of visuals. I'm talking about again. Radio lack of some rules for writing narration. Sorry, I forgot to explain it about. The most important thing to remember while writing the narration is that it should be made an integral part of the script design. When you are writing a script for the narrative technique to be made use of, so narration should be built into the structure of the script, because when you are writing the script, because you are a script writer, you should know what how you are going to script for the narrative part. So that is what you are supposed to build into the structure of the script. The narration should retain the flavor of spoken language, because a narrative should be like in a spoken language manner. It will not be like informal. It should be informal, not the formal like. And also, the narration should retain the flavor of spoken language. All the rules that apply to writing the dialogue also apply, because whatever the dialogues you want to apply, you apply here. It must never become cumbersome and pretentious, because it should not, seem like, it should not be, seemed like, or it's like, cumbersome and pretentious. So that is what, because now your narration must have the quality of the spoken word. Moreover, it should fit the mood and character of the program. That is the narrative part, because my dear students, you should make such things to be pointed here. Then make sure sentences should be very short as possible, because are supposed to be very as short as possible when you are writing a script for the narration part. Long sentences have no place in radio broadcasting, because if you are very much passionate about writing, for wanted to be like very script writer for radio or television, and for many other writing, you're supposed to have it in mind, something like your long sentences are not supposed to be produced. No, there's no scope for long sentences. Short sentences are easier to read and easier for the listener to understand. That is what I meant it, because the whole course is meant it for, because you should have a, because it's a like an elementary thing, because whenever, if at all you want to be a script writer, you should know I should not make use of long sentences. I should make use of only short sentences. Sentence length should vary so that all sentences are not the same length. Otherwise, a sing-song effect would be created. Sing-song in the sense the soundtrack must have breathing space, because when you are making use of the sentence, because you can behind background, You can use the breathing space, that means a relief from any kind of talk. Breathing space can be created with sound, music, or even silence. Sometimes radio makes use of what breathing for the breathing space can be created with some sound or music, even sometimes silence also. We have observed as the listener to the radio. And radio is a lack of visuals because, as we all know, that I had discussed yesterday also, because radio is a blind one, because we never see who is speaking, who is there. Only we are hearing somebody else who is speaking to us. That is what radio is, a lack of visuals. Radio, the narration, dialogue, or commentary has to describe the action, but because since the radio is a lack of visuals, the one who is speaking, the one who is narrating, the one who is a, I mean, is a there is speaking of on thing. The narration, dialogue, or commentary has to describe the action, because you are supposed to describe the action as if the action is happening, because you are supposed to make the readers inspired, make the readers interested to listen to this is what so he's wonderfully explaining the things very much on that thing, and if people should feel it. The narration, dialogue, commentary has to describe the action as well. It would be terribly dull if the radio is went on describe everything like a book. Book is okay. Book is not okay. Descriptions of the action or situation has to be implied within the dialogue or narration, because what is there in the book you are going to read. This will not fetch you, this will not fetch you the listener more interesting. Even they could not expect the listeners who is very much inspired. They start ignoring the phrase. So when those people are started ignoring the function, the program is failure. That is what you're not supposed to be like. What is there in the book. You're supposed to use it as a narration. You should know how to describe and how to explain it in the thing. That is what. For instance, the remedy of the lack of stage props on the Elizabethan stage of Shakespeare would take the aid of scene painting. When Macbeth in the play, the same, hallucinating a dagger after committing murder, he exclaims, "Is this the dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand." We know what he has seen. Shakespeare goes on to describe Macbeth's futile attempt to clutch the dagger without resorting to narration. That is what by continuing the monologue. I would try to recite the very dialogues of very what is that scene of the Macbeth. Come, come, let me class thee. I have thee not. Thus, writing for radio often demands scene painting. When you are making use of this, come, let me class thee. I have thee not. Thus, writing for radio often demands scene painting. This means building visuals into dialogue, and this is an effective dramatic device. In a documentary or feature, the narrator would be expected to supply the visuals. It may not be enough to state that students went on a strike today. It may be visualized for the listener by mentioning that the campus today, campus today, or a deserted look with students having gone on a strike. So that is what you are supposed to be very careful with, because since the radio is a lack of visuals, you should know how to paint the scene painting. You should make use of certain things. So that is what, to the utter emptiness in radio, the script writer adds sound, settings, period, mood, and character. Because the script writer should have all such concepts when you are writing a script for it. Because it should be like what, you should add sound, settings, and the period, the time of it, and mood of the characters, and mood of the whole program, and the character whom you are making use of. In radio, scriptwriter prompts you the listener, because in radio, because in TV you are not supposed to, you are not supposed to allow to prompt the listener, because here in the radio you are supposed to prompt the listener to apply your own imagination to the setting and characters. In this way, radio has the capacity to paint pictures bigger and more fantastic than those on the screen. So that is what now you're supposed to be like. Then I mean, even I'll tell you like the time, money, and effort spent in creating the setting characters in radio would be unnecessary more, because radio programs take place in minds of the listeners. My dear students, you should make it a point. Radio programs take place in the minds of the listeners. One could have any setting or character without any complaining that it it was not what he or she had visualized as it is. That is what a complete comprehension of how visual and literary codes can be translated into auditory codes, because a complete comprehension of how visual and literary codes can be translated into auditory codes, that is sound. I mean, what becomes imperative thereby is a competent grasp over the use of sound. That is what you're supposed to make use of sound. Sometimes when you are broadcasting, such and such program, even sound effect I talk about sound effects. The next, sub unit of sub unit of writing for media and radio and television, types of sound effects. Sound effects in the sense, sound effects play a very essential role. Sound effects. I mean SFX. Yes, FX. It is what the special effects, because if you are singing a song, this will not make people very much entertained. When you are singing a song along with karaoke with music, and certain music, so people would look at you, people would listen to you attentively and would clap you after the song. That is the thing, is because anything, you should have a plan how the program can be added to some other, can be added to some thing which make very more interesting, like that is what sound effects. Types of sound effects, like there are a number of ways in which effects can be defined, because sound effects, I mean special effects. One useful way to classify them is according to function they perform, because action sounds. The first is action sounds. I have mentioned in the slide. Mostly, sound is created through movement or actions, because we know, because sound is created through movement or action. The sound produced thereby is an effective indication of the situation. Because when you are making use of the sound, there should be some effective situation. There would be pathos, there would be some serious issues, there would be some musical entertainment, something like you are supposed to know, direct the very program. As a director, being a director, you should know, as a producer of the program, you should know where the special effect, I mean SFX, should be made use of. Like mostly sound is created through movement or action. The sound produced thereby is an effective indication of the situation. Advancing footsteps may denote the entry, retreating footsteps may denote an exit. The clock striking indicates the time, because if you are giving a program, if you are making a program on radio, the clock strikes, which indicates the time, and tapping a cane may denote a blind man, and so on. Action sounds may also describe the mood of the situation, because you should know which mood and which situation which is going to imply through the sound that you are going to make use of. Like a door slamming shut, a door slamming shut may indicate anger, or someone humming or whistling may indicate a sense of lightheartedness. Something, sometime, oh, something humming, something lightheartedness, somewhat anger, and slamming the door and shut the door. This would really indicate, when you're listening to radio, if at all you want to give some signification of the situation, the mood of the situation, you can make use of this sound, whereby the listeners understand this is what the effect, the very effect they could perceive it. So this is where you are successful, like. Then the second point is ambient sound. That was the first sound was action sound. That action sound was created through movement in actions. That's what I told you, how people are like striking indicates the time, and the clock strikes, and the and slamming and shed and anger, and humming and whistling may indicates lightheartedness. That's what ambient sound, on the other hand, suggests the locally unsetting. Take for instance the production of radio drama. You take the instance. The lovers are at the railway station and are about to part. How do you convey it's a railway situation? How would you convey it's a railway situation? Surely you cannot have your character say, here in the situation, here in the situation, and so forth. A narrator may sound equally silly, but best to use ambience. The sound of voices. The sound of voices, what? Trains hooting, trains running, and feet shuffling create an ambience that is very typical. That is what the very situation is. What the lovers are at the railway station, are about to part. How do you convey it? You are conveying the sound of voices, like trains hooting, trains running, And feet shuffling create an ambience that is very typical. The dialogue spoken against the background of these ambience will give you what you want, what you really, understand the very concept, understand the very, phenomenal, things are going on there. As a script writer, you will have to use a lot of discretion regarding the use of sound, because as a script writer, you must know where discretionary power you have, because it's not like discretionary power. You should know where I could make use of this sound, where I could not make use of sound, because the sound should be silenced there, the sound should be dominant there, and the very situation is demanding the sound. But this is what discretionary thing the scripter has got here. Then too few may make your production insipid, while too many are quite likely to be distracted. SFX means script in such a way that it does not stand out, draw attention to itself. Needless piling of one SFX on the top, other will not clutter the script but introduce. Clutter in this means somewhere haphazardous. And the script but introduce complications both in terms of production and aesthetics. You must ask, you must ask, my dear students, you just make it a point here. Does the sound help clarify something? Does the sound help clarify something? Does it add to authenticity? Because the very situation gets added to some extent authenticated. Does it create mood or enhance it? Does it create mood? Because when you're hearing, when you're listening to the very program, when you're hearing the very sound which is made use of by the script writer, does it change the mood? It enhances the auditory quality. Auditory quality, I mean, does it fit in naturally, and does it sound forced, and does it fit in naturally, and does it fit sound forced? And because whether forcibly the sound is being made use of, or else it was quite natural. That is what you're supposed to be very careful, because we are being a student of this program. You must know when you are if you are working for the radio station in your place, if at all you want to do it something else, if you want to work it for, you are supposed to know how sounds. I mean SFX. I mean special effects to your narrative part. Any programs which you are broadcasting, you are supposed to have a clear understanding of it, my dear students. Then identifying the describe the SFX. A radio scriptwriter producer must realize that recorded sound often sounds very different from one heard directly by the ear. So make it a point again. A radio script writer producer must realize, because a scripter must realize that recorded sound often sounds very different from one heard directly by the ear. That's what the mediation of technology creates a difference. So I think I accept it. I endorse it. Because therefore one must remember that the source or cause of certain sounds cannot be determined simply by hearing the sound itself. You may have to help the listener to identify sounds, because the listener who is listening to you, this would help. This would help him to identify the sounds. This can be done by either referring to it in the dialogue. When you are writing a script, my dear students, it becomes a very important to describe the sound effect. The sound effect, because you're supposed to write it in a script. This would add, this would give you much and more effect for this, and this would make this would write, you should write as a script writer in a script, like, you must be consistent in the way you choose to describe the effects. You should be very consistent. Sometimes when you're something as an audience, as a viewer of a movie, I would definitely sometimes feel very irritated. Why the very director, the music writer, why this sound has been used? That was not used. That was not made use of here. Why what made him to what made him to make use of this sound in this situation? In this situation, that is not quite apt. This is how I always make my myself realize sometimes. That is how here you are being a writer of a script, being a audience of a program and listener to the radio. You should know why, how this sound effect is very much added to, and how this sound effect is very apt to this program. You must know that. That is what you must be consistent in the way to choose the describe the aspects. There are two common ways of doing this. One is to describe the action. So why you are making use of the sound special effect to describe the action that produces the sound. and the other is to describe the sounds themselves. So first is to what the action should be described here that produces the sounds, and the other is to describe the sound themselves. In the first method, the action is usually labeled business. I mean, bis and may appear as follows. That is what there is also an example here. I will read for you. And car door opens and closes. Footsteps on the sidewalk and up the steps. Knock on the door. This is a more common method of indicating effect. The following are some of the common pitfalls for new script writers. Sometimes there are many even pitfalls, common pitfalls because they face hindrances and hindrances for the new script writer. So how they are facing it, I'll tell you because the directions are ambiguous. A statement like SFX, I mean special effects, girl leaves room will keep the director wondering whether you mean the sound of footsteps or the door shutting. It's always useful to be specific. This is what questions. This is what a thought you're supposed to go around. See, I'll read again. A statement like SFX, I mean special effect. I'm talking about sound effect. Girl leaves room will keep the director wondering whether you mean the sound of footsteps or the door shutting. It's always used to be specific. It's always used to be specific because when girl is coming out, when girl is leaves the room, so you're supposed to make use of the sound of the footsteps or the door shutting. Avoid unnecessary verbiage. Verbiage means to denote children playing. You can do away with the additions like denote, to connote, to suggest. What is denote? So it's like something you're speaking about. Connote means it's the meaning of the situation, the connotation, the connotated meaning. Like to suggest means you are going to suggesting something, and simply go ahead and state what you want to denote, connote, and suggest. That's what avoid unnecessary verbiage. Same thing. No need of speaking something when sound is being played. You're supposed to suggest, you're supposed to denote, you're supposed to connote through the sound effect, this special effect. Be economical, never clutter your script with a million SFX. Don't make use of more and more SFX to avoid irrelevant details. SFX it should be made use of for the economical purpose. That is what Krishna broke the bottle containing the green liquid. If the green liquid is essential to the story, then it would have to be mentioned. If not, then if there arises interesting question as to whether the broken bottle of the pink liquid sound different from one containing the green liquid. That is what not required because the bottle is okay. That is how the sound effects is all about. So the next part of the thing is music for radio. How music is being used for radio. That is the another part of it. So music for radio. So music serves the function of being a powerful aid in reinforcing the emotional effect. Sometimes if at all you want to understand what the very dialogue, the saddest dialogue which is being dialogued by the character. So what kind of music should be played background in background? That is because when you are playing the music background, when the situation is very pathetic, so you understand both because you are going to be emotional much and more because you are listening to the very situations, you are understand, you are perceiving it, you are experiencing the whole situation. That is what music is for. That music is everything because people like music. Even I like music. Even I think you might like music also. You also might like. So music serves the function of being a powerful and reinforcing the emotional effect as per drama. The following are the most common uses of a music in radio as a signature or theme for a drama series or for a particular drama because as a signature there is some signature because in our places there are many dramas are broadcasted aired on radio broadcasted on radio where I could understand the the very music, the signature music. Like as a signature this could be the this is what the this music is very much this music belongs to this drama. This music is the director of this. This is what. And the drama series are for a particular drama as a transition between scenes and indicating beginnings or ends. Because when you are giving some transiting, Well, when you are giving a transition, you are in a transition, means one act to another act, one scene to the another, where you are supposed to play a music. What kind of music you could play? That depends on the very connotations of the drama, the situation of the drama. As a background to scene or narration. So when you are narrating, so along with the music, alongside the music, if you are narrating it, it would be a very effective to the listener. As a part of the narration itself, for instance, dialogue at a wedding with the band playing in the background. This could be much more interesting to the listener as a part of the narration. So when you are narrating something about the marriage, I mean dialogue at a wedding with a band of there's music. Something I think in my place, the wedding music would be very different, very traditional here in my place. As a stab, a sting, or a critical juncture in the dramatic development, that could also be, you may use of this very sound music and to create mood and creating, mood because the mood for the creation of the mood, you can make use of the music, where in the radio. So music makes significant contribution radio, but must be used with great discretion again, discretion very very sensitive when you are making use of the very sound effects of the radio and must sensitize you are must be sensitive you must be sensitized. Moderation and selection are of most important. So what moderate, so and selection, so what should be the sound and what kind of what sort of sound which can be made use of here. That is what very often students tend to use well-known phrases of composition audience and completely carried away by them. That is what someone listens to your background music and says, "How beautiful you blew it." Your background music should never come to the foreground. It should enrich, enhance, reinforce, but never steal the show because your sound effect should not, steal the very show. That is what your sound should be immersed in the situation like. So that is what avoiding overkill the equally important. That is what the music part of the radio and format for radio scripting is very given in the book. Words that are spoken into the microphone because I would tell you this can be accomplished in a number of ways because when you are writing a format for radio scripting, so these are the things you are supposed to follow. You are supposed to keep in mind. You are supposed to bear in mind. Type all material to be spoken in regular upper and lower case letters in the usual way. So when you are, if you because you are all, all, people know typing. I mean, so type all the material to be spoken, whichever things are supposed to be spoken. You type all that in regular upper and lowercase, uppercase and lowercase letters in the usual way. Type all the material that is not spoken in capital letters. Type all the material that is not spoken in capital letters. This includes character names, directions for reading lines, other descriptive material, music, and sound effects. Put parentheses around any element inserted into a line that is not part of the line itself. This includes directions for reading the lines, music, SFX, some notations, etc. Underline music and SFX descriptions and indent them beyond the point where dialogue or narration begins. Put parentheses around descriptions of music to distinguish it from sound effects. That is what it also is also important for your radio script to be legibly typed. You are supposed to type legibly. Aspiring script writer should definitely learn typing because if at all you want to be, very good script writer, you should know typing because it's a basic, tenets of a script writer. And double spaced, you are supposed to write it. The following is a sample of a standard format. This is published here because how Macbeth, the very drama, the excerpt of the drama is, given here as an instance. Uh, that is what you can make use of here because how his horrible shadow mocks me because how Macbeth is speaking as a character because if I am a character of Macbeth, if I am a character of Macbeth on radio, I would read like this: His horrible shadow mocks me. I will tomorrow to the weird sisters. More shall they speak. For now I am bent to know by my worst means the worst music transition because you are changing something else. Just effects, weird sound, ooh, some weird sound, some sounds which are very apprehensive to the listener. I mean to the audience, to the listeners. Cauldron bubble, thunder drum, some thunders and wind. Witches, round about the cauldron go in the poison enters through. First witch, eye of newt, and the second witch, and toe of a frog, and the third witch, wool of a bat. Witches, double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble. This is what the effect should be given. If you are a speaker on the radio, you should the script should be like this, because when you are reading this script, you are supposed to make use of the sounds and the music, background music should be made use of mildly, and you should know how connotatively, denotatively, and suggestively the sound should be used. That is what thing is about. So understanding of auditory codes is integral to the understanding of adaptation. In this section, use the term adaptation. Adaptation in the sense, the first point is transfer the material from one from to another, because you are transferring the material from one form to another. Novels, for instance, say radio, and more specific replacement of codes audio by visual, and vice versa. Later in the section, the terms translation and adaptation are used interchangeably, because very much interchangeable in the sense supplementary. So many of the scripts written in the radio are based on the material first created in another form, novels, because it was there in the book. It was there in the book, written by somebody else, novels, novellas, and short stories, biographies, and stage plays. This section will deal with the challenge of writing scripts founded on the other book, because you are supposed to take the book, you are supposed to write the script for it. So first and foremost, you must acknowledge the idea that you have borrowed from others, because it is must, my dear students. When you are borrowing, when you are bringing some such and such things from any other books from somebody else, you are supposed to acknowledge him or his book or her book. That is what it must be like. You should be acknowledging, and you should say that it's a plagiarism, because plagiarism is nothing but you are borrowing some certain things from the certain books. You are going to acknowledge it. It is not creative, part of yours, individual. There is another misconception that a script writer must be completely faithful. There is also one more misconception is there, that a script writer must be completely faithful to the original work. This is an outdated notion, because nobody likes it now. Because the term adaptation, because you are going to adopt the very concept, the plot of the story, the content of the story, the main essence, the main content of it, kernel of it, KERNEL, and borrowing from original material should, however, be used carefully, because you should use carefully the content of it. The following is a brief summary of what adaptation generally involves, because when you are adopting as a script writer, my dear students, something that's what I'm saying. If you're aspiring for a script writer, you should know how to adopt it. I'll tell you the brief summary, generally the key points which involves for the script writing. Shortening or lengthening the material. Very often, the original has to be compressed and expanded. The original can be compressed and expanded. The process of selection should be guided by relevance, dramatic interest, and aesthetics. You should see all such things, because the relevance of it and dramatic interest, how the dramatic interest is going to be created amongst the audience and the listeners, and the aesthetic, the beauty of it, the beauty of it. Selection of material. Selection need not always be guided by the constraint of length, because it is not like also 500 pages. Like I cannot adapt it. Why not? In order to shorten the material, because subplots, scenes of secondary importance may all be sacrificed at the altar of the adaptation. You can take the plot of it. You can take some secondary importance it. You may even eliminate characters sometimes. You can make use of narrative part there. You can make use how certain things are you can take it out and make use of some other techniques wherein then that you feel not adding to the dramatic interest, you may either eliminate or fuse characters. You can fuse the characters, you can eliminate them. Because it's all discretionary, discretion to the script writer. When you are writing a script, that is what there is a larger scope for the script writer in radio. In radio, if at all you want to be a script writer, you should follow certain things, because sometimes experience teaches you everything. But even then, if you have these ideas, So how sound effects should be made use of, and how adaptation should be, included, inserted, and should be taken as, for the script writing. This is what you should do. Then translation into dialogue. Sometimes, it is a novella. So there is no scope for dialogue in the novel and novellas. So something you should make use of dialogue, because if you are a script writer, you can convert. Because I'm a theater man in my place. Because one play was there, like one short story was there, Bugri. Its name is Bugri. The Bugri, which is written in a descriptive format. So we took it out. We made use. We adopted. We adopted to the stage. We we made we made use of that book for the drama, for the enactment of drama on the stage. Then we distributed the characters. So we created the own dialogues, our own, on our own. We just, we sat together. We created the dialogue. We people are into theater. We theater people sat together. We made that descriptive writing into the dialogues, translated into dialogue. That can be done. That is what we. It was a wonderful drama. It was staged for many times in my place, Bugri, by Mogali Ganesh. That is what, from one dialogue to another, it is a translation of narrative or descriptive material into dialogue. While translating, adopting narration or description to dialogue, you must use language suited to the radio, because you should know, even if you are converting, I mean translating the very novel, the descriptive writing into a dialogue format, you should know you are the script writer for the radio. You should have the knowledge. It should suit to the radio language. That is what you have to have it. Then translation to auditory codes when adopting a radio, because this involves the use of sound effects and music to replace visual codes, because visual codes cannot be seen. You cannot see the visual, because there's no scope for visual, visualities here. And music, for instance, can be used to denote transition from one chapter to another, because you can make use of it. That is what the narration part I have closed here. So next part I'm going to, because even the summing up is there. There are some questions also here, because you can read those questions. Even they are given some activity 4 and activity 5. And you can read it because this really consumes my time. That is what. Now the part is uh, adaptation that I have used now, made use of shortening. Uh, that's by shortening and lengthening the material, selection of materials, giving a sense of contemporary translation. Did I not explain it? Shortening the lengthening. Yeah, I explained it actually. Very often the original has to be compressed and expanded. I explained it really. Shortening and adaptation. You're adapting as a script writer. You're supposed to make use of all such things. Shortening or lengthening the material, selection of materials, give the sense of the contemporary. You should give some relevance to the very extent of your writing of script. Translation into a dialogue, translation to auditory codes when adopting to radio. This is the thing. So now the radio talk and profile. It's an unit 4 in a book, on which I'm going to discuss it again, because radio talk. I think radio talk, you must be knowing, you must have heard, many programs on radio, via radio. I mean, which is aired on radio, which are aired on radio. That is what, now you would be, having an idea. Now you start and you would be having an idea. So how the program I was listened to earlier, how very different you are going to see it now. The difference you are going to see it when you had listened to the radio programs, when you as a student, when you are working for it, because this is what. So radio talks are different kinds, because radio talks are different kinds, because longer or shorter in duration. Radio talks are like longer or shorter in duration, addressed to special groups sometimes, such as students, community workers, field workers, educated, allied, teachers and instructors and so on. It cannot be like video talk should be limited to this and not done for this. Anything. Video talk is what, like I told you, longer or shorter in duration, addressed to special groups like such as students, community workers, and field workers, educated even, allied, teachers, instructors, and agricultural farmers, even about the prostitutes, even about the transgenders, and much and more issues you can address it on. But whenever the audience, it is the business of the talker to formulate for himself. So that is what the talker must attempt to answer their questions and meet their needs. Only then will the talk will be relevant. Because the talker, the one who is talking, because is deliberating the thing, he must have it because he must attempt to answer their questions. Because in some way, on some special days, something we are when we are celebrating some cardiac day, some AIDS day, some Women's Day, somebody would be some or the other would be invited to speak on that occasion. Even they would be given the question hours also because it will be online like. So somebody would call him and somebody would ask him, "This is what my the thing I am suffering from. Can you give me some guidance?" That is what because the talker must attempt to answer their questions and meet their needs. Only then the talk will be real. The very talk will be reliant. Let us note the unique characteristics of a radio talk. So, unique characteristics of radio talk what? A talk is something which is listened to. A talk is for what? Is for listening to. It is not something which one reads. It is not going to, you are not going to read. It is true, of course. That a talk may subsequently be published and can be read or referred because after a talk, it can be published, it can be read by the reader. But first, when it was aired on radio, it was for the ear. It was for the ear. But that is another matter. And in any case, only a small number of the talks delivered find their way into the brain because very few talks were, went into a brain. The second part is what a talk may be listened to by individuals. A talk may be listened to by individuals alone in a room, in a home, or in the company, or of members of the family and friends in the present. In this respect, a talk differs from a speech or a lecture which is addressed to a collective audience or a group because a talk may be listened to by individuals. Because I'm a listener, somebody is giving a talk, I'm holding the transistor, I'm listening. I'm not asking somebody to listen to it because I'm holding the transistor of my own. I'm listening to individuals alone in a room. I can take the transistor to my room, to my dining room, to my home, and in the company of members of the family and friends. But I would be listening to as an individual. The third point is what in a radio talk, the speaker is not face to face with the audience. That we know already because radio is a blindfolded. Because radio we are not going to visualize, we are not going to see it. Who is speaking and who is not speaking there. The speaker is not face to face with this audience. They do not see each other. Communication is in one direction only because the man who is speaking is communicating. Whoever is listening to, he doesn't know. But we are well aware of what somebody is speaking to. We should listen it. This is the program which is very beneficiary for us. That's why we are listening it. That is what communication is in one direction only, from the speaker to the audience, and it is only dependent on words and the manner in which they are delivered. Because the way, the manner, the style, the pattern, the style, the pattern of style he employed to deliver the goods. I mean, deliver the contents to the audience. The fourth point is the talk is something which can be enjoyed in retrospect. The talk is something which can be enjoyed, but you should remember what the speaker has said in order to be able to think of it, understand its full implication, thus appreciate. This is what retrospectively you are enjoying the talk who talked on the certain subjects. The talk is personal. It's a particular person who is speaking to because the thing, the contents which are being delivered by a speaker who is alone, all alone, is an individual. It's a purely a personal. It's a particular person who is speaking to you. That is what the characteristics of what radio talk. The first part is what a talk is something which is listening to. The second part is a talk may be listened to by individuals alone in a room, some in a home, or in some company of members. The third point is the speaker is not face to face with audience. The speaker is not face to face with audience. The talk is something which can be enjoyed in retrospect. The next point is the talk is personal. You should know it because you should have to grab, you should have to, perceive all such things because you should know what the, technicalities, when you are as a producer, when you are a producer in a radio, say in the team of the radio, you should know how to produce it, these certain programs. So radio talk and profile. I would speak because it is very attractiveness. The two most important subjective factors which make to recall the interest and attention. The first thing the talker must do is to rouse the interest of the listener because if you are a talker, because I am a talker, you just imagine, assume that you are a talker, you should know how to rouse the interest of the listener because the listener he should stop his vehicle, he should park his vehicle on somewhere footpath, and he should listen to your program. That should be the level of inspiring and interesting life. If something, because the first thing the talker must do is rouse the interest of the listener. If something concerns him, he will naturally become interested in it because you should connect the dot of each and individual when you are planning for the program to be broadcasted on radio and via radio. So that is what become interested in it and will pay attention to it, but it is of remote or merely academic interest. He will at best listen to it without closely following the argument. Even many times, I was very much passionate about the radio programs, even news. For example, news. Here in my place at 1:30 or 2 o'clock, there is an English news, where broadcasted on radio. So I would be very much passionate because I would be freeing myself. I'd be freeing myself for that hour. I'd be listening to the program. That is how you're supposed to do that. Even the talker, the very program, producer should know how to attract the listener in that way. If a radio talk is on the functioning of the railways, the focus should be on the safety aspect. If it is, the very situation, the connotative, the thing is the railways, the functioning of railways, the focus should be on the safety aspect. So how we are going to, board the train, how we are going to sit in your seat. So what are the safety measures you are supposed to follow? How you are supposed to, take care of your, things. This is how, the announcement would be, there on radio sometimes. And rather than a budgetary analysis, the radio talk is aimed at the listening public and therefore should center around points and will hold the listener's attention because you should address the issue, not like you should beating around the bush. Like we are not supposed to simply speak about the things are not much used, things are not much good for the listener. Like that is what the second part is clarity. So how you are attracting your listeners, the same way your clarity should be a very good one because the listener perceives the talk as a whole or as a pattern, and in remembering it also the pattern that comes to the mind. Because the listener who is listening to you, he always as a whole, he, the pattern and remembering it also the pattern that comes into his mind. Experimental evidence shows that the listener tries to get hold of the pattern because I, as a listener, I would always catch the phrases, the word he made use of, and the style to which he employed to, and he is delivering the thing, and the central theme of what is communicated in talk. So what the essence, the kernel of the talk. So I would how it was produced, how it was delivered. So these are the techniques you are supposed to make use of because radio is what every day, every minute of your time you are supposed to think that you see that how you are going to make the listeners attractive, and your very clarity, you're very much you are very much going with clarity in your sense of broadcasting the programs. That is what you are supposed to remember it. So that is what psychologists have described this process. I mean, the very clarity process. The process of reacting to given material as an effort after meaning. We not only seek to find a meaning in what we perceive, we not only seek to find a meaning in what we perceive, we also recall more easily something which we have understood. That is what learning is, what an experience. I tell my students always in my class, learning should be like an experience. Everybody should undergo the experience, not like you should buy a heart and you should learn something, you should forget it. Learning, you should feel it, you should experience the very thing of it. That is what the learning will not happen suddenly. The learning which you are acquiring, which you are acquiring, the very learning from somebody who is speaking to. So that would be a unknowingly, unconsciously, it is going to register in your subconscious mind. That is what something which we have to understand. That is what the psychologists have clarified here, that we only seek to find a meaning in what we perceive. we also recall more easily something which we have understood. The lesson for the talker is to ensure that there is a central theme in what he says. Because the talker who is speaking, he should understand what is the central theme in what he says. A talk which is a series of disjointed observations will not be recorded. It will impression on the listener because not like how the way you are presenting it, not like, but the finally how you are going to leave a little impression on the listener. That is the utmost important. I feel always. That is what psychologists have also drawn attention to the factor described as the dominant detail which facilitates recalls. That is what he speaks about eternal triangle with a difference, and he seeks out the movement towards the woman's self dignity is a dominant detail because you do it, you read it for yourself. The first part is attractiveness for a radio talk. That second one is clarity. I told you how the talk as a whole as a pattern, and remembering it also pattern to come into the mind, and the theme what is communicated in the talk, and how you are going to hold the attention of the listener. That and pattern of your the talker is utmost important. I said it now. The content density is also important. The content density is means which in any case make little impression and which are easily forgotten, chief among these forgotten. Once they get into the lakhs and the crores, they may be important. That is what content density is very important. When you are a wise talker who is anxious to communicate, will choose one name and one that is least unfamiliar to his audience. The person who is concerned to show off his learning will use of all the three. The former will succeed a radio talker, while the later may not. Later may not. Sorry. That is what when you are talking about that is what content density. So don't burden your script. You are not supposed to burden the script with details which in any case make little impression because overloading it and to attract the audience you are making use of all such which are not really necessary for the script. You are making use of it to only attract the audience is not required. It's not needed. That is what content density is all about. And techniques of a radio talk. The next part is the first, radio talk and profile characteristics and talk. I talked about how the listener is listening to, then the talk may be listened to by individuals, and radio talk the speaker is not faced with the audience. The talker is something which can be enjoyed in retrospect. The talker is personal. That's the characteristics of a radio talk. And I talked about attractiveness, clarity, and content density. How we are not supposed to overload in content density to only attract the listeners towards the program. Not needed. That is what he said. That is a technique of a radio talk. What is the technique of a radio talk? That I told you, radio talk demands meeting certain basic requirements. They are clarity, informality, self-explanatory. Self-explanatory. Again, I'll read it again. Clarity, informality, and self-explanatory. That is the thing is about. Uh, to speak about clarity, when you're speaking about the technique of radio talk, the technique. So, what techniques you are going to make use of to hold a talk on radio? We have discussed clarity, which helps the listener to recall dominant details of the talk after a certain lapse of time. Let us see how we can achieve clarity. It is commonly agreed that that is what I'll read. The meaning of each sentence must be clear when heard only once. So clarity in the sense, the meaning of each sentence, the meaning of each sentence must be clear when heard only once. You cannot listen to it a second time to unravel the meaning because as a listener to the radio, once you listen to it, so you cannot listen to second time because it is being aired. You cannot go back again. You cannot tune it and you cannot repeat it again because it can go back like. So since it is being aired, each sentence must be clear when heard it once. You cannot listen to it a second time to unravel the meaning, to get the meaning of it. That is what, but this is not possible in the case of a talk. That is what the printed article, if you do not get the intent of the author on reading it once, you can read it again. Whereas in the talk, you cannot do that. So the first principle of writing of a radio talk is make reads, make each sentence transparently clear. My dear students, when you are scripting for the radio talk, when you are writing for a radio talk, you are supposed to aim to make each sentence transparently clear. This can be achieved in the following ways. What are these following ways? Sentences should be very short. Sentences should be very short under the clarity part of it. A good rule to follow is to keep the sentences down to about 3 lines each. Long sentences frequently involve qualifying classes. You can simplify them by putting the qualifying classes into separate sentences. That is what. If the sentence is very lengthy, is very long, you're supposed to clutch it, and you should make it a point of it. That is what, for an example, several distinguished economists believe that the huge budgetary deficit tends to result in inflation. I would repeat it again, my dear students. Several distinguished economists believe that a huge budgetary deficit tends to result in inflation, rather than to say the view that a huge deficit in the budget will tend to result in inflation is held by many distinguished economists. This is how you are supposed to make the sentence into uh, fragments, and then you make it a point there. Then difficult and uncommon words should be avoided. I've been telling you in the last session also, you're supposed to avoid difficult and uncommon words, because should be very much avoided. Because remember that the listener neither keeps a dictionary close to hand. Because don't think that the listeners who is holding a dictionary when while listening to your program, something like. Nor is the time while listening to refer to that, because there is no time at all. When you listen to your radio, the listener does not have a time to look into the dictionary, understand the meaning. The program would go forward. Like that is what easy communication is basic to radio talk. You should have easy communication. Then the second part is informality. The clarity part is over. So when you're talking about clarity, so you're supposed to know that how the difficult and uncommon should be avoided, and sentence should be shorter. Like informality means a speech or lecture is heard or listened to by a collective audience or group. In the case of the radio talk, however, it is the individual. So a speech or lecture heard by the group of the people who are in the classroom, who are in the hall, some conference hall, who listen to him, they understand it. However, it is the individual, because where in the radio it is individual, a few family members, perhaps a friend or two, who constitute the audience. The talker speaks to them, thousands of such small groups in the intimacy of their homes. That is what informality. Informality in the sense they never follow any formality, like they speak to the audience, whoever. To a larger thing. The radio talk is like a conversation with friends. Like it is informal, it is charity, because it is not like very bounded, very constructively. They never do it. It is like informal, something you're as if you are speaking to somebody else. Uh, I have heard some programs on radio in my place, because whenever they want to conduct some agricultural issues, they never directly address the issue. They create the dialogue as if they are speaking to the farmer. And I do not know whether they are in touch with the farmer. They are going to bring a farmer to the studio. They are going to speak it up. I do not know, but there will be a same thing conversation, like you would be speaking as a farmer. This man would be interviewing you. This would be man is speaking to something else. That is what informality, because there is no formality, like as if you are talking in your home, as if you are talking to your friends. That is the informality I mean. um, yes, it's informal, it is a chatty, true to the other party. The listeners cannot butt in, they cannot interject. It is the talker's job to do that for them, to listening and trying them. The successful talker will attempt to do so, because the successful talker, he should have the common sense, he should have an idea how to make the talk, how to hold the talk with somebody else more interesting to the audience. In a radio talk, the personality of the presenter is important, because the voice clearance, the way you are making the way you are making the presentation is very much important, utmost important, because that is what in a radio talk informality, under informality, the personality of the presenter is important. One may have made a special study on the subject, because You should study the subject because if at all you conduct a program on agricultural and some issues, major issues, dire issues in society, you should research on it. You should conduct some research on it. You should speak on it. Simply, you cannot give the data, you cannot give the information unless you know the things, unless you research it. Another may have a inside knowledge. A third may have been an eyewitness to an important event. That is why listeners are interested in what the talker has to say because the listeners are keeping himself very interesting because the very talker who is speaking very giving us very good information piece of information. I should be very careful and very attentive. That is the thing all about. The talker is not a disembodied voice which is presenting dry as dust facts. And when you prepare a talk, assimilate your materials thoroughly because you should make use of all materials that you have researched, that you have got it from other sources. You should get ready with all some and consider the main thesis you want to put across. You want to put it across. I want to make it. You want to posit what the thing is all about. Then and harness and crucial facts which articulate your case. You are supposed to articulate what is really very important in that case. The upshot of the issue, as I see it, is this. This is what I can make of the problem. Statements of this kind in the first person are entirely in order to eradicate. These are the things, certain things. These are the things you are supposed to make use of when you want to hold a radio talk on a radio station. This is what the first part is. What clarity. The second part is informative, as if you are talking to somebody else. It is not like it should be done within the constructive. It should be done constructively, not like very formally. Very formally, it should not be like it should be artificial. It would be so artificial for the listeners. They would not lead the listener to more interesting life. That is a self-explanatory. Sometimes you need not explain everything. So everything you cannot explain because it's a program because you are time bounded. You cannot explain each and everything is. That is what a talker is not face to face with the audience. This is another point of difference between the radio talk and the public speech or lecture. Radio talk is different, public speech is different. So that is what the talker does not have the advantage. The speaker faces the audience. That is what facial expression communications a great deal and has problems because the audience can see from the hint of the smile on the speaker's face and it's making a mild joke because you could perceive how the smile of a talker, how the joke is cutting. You could perceive it by the sound of it, by this speech of the speaker. Like reading out a script is rather like speaking lines in a play. That is what when you're reading the lines of the script, it should be like as if reading out as a script in a play. The talk has to be carefully rehearsed because before coming to the program, when you are supposed to host the program, you are supposed to rehearse it as so many times because as much as possible because as many as time as possible I think as many as time possible so that every nuance of meaning is brought out. You are supposed to be very clear in your mind. Every nuance should be maintained in your mind. However, the talk must on no account be over dramatized. No, this should not be dramatized because it would then cease to be conversation and would sound unnatural. One of the important advantages face-to-face communication gives the speaker is the feedback to the expressions and the face of the audience. That is what. But in radio talk, you would not get the like uh, feedback. You could get the feedback after the program through mail, through the letters. You could get the thing. That is what the talker must therefore anticipate audience response when writing a script because that when you're writing a script for the radio talk, the talker must therefore anticipate the audience because you should know what thing could anticipate the audience. You should ask the the one who is speaking, talking on the subject. If you find anything lacking clarity or taking too much of time, you should find a corrective because you should know well in advance. You are a producer, you should know well in advance. You should inform the the one who talks on the certain issues. You should tell him this is what time bounded because it should be because you are suppose somewhere the the contents are not very much clarity, and then you're taking too much of time. That is what you should inform me. You should make them. This is what. That's what I gave one talk in radio because about some talk I gave it on radio. Uh, Humor is not a joke. Humor is not a joke, which is very much connected to an English grammar. How English grammar can be taught using by using humor in classroom environment, because students forget, because in our place many are not much well versed in English. Many are not much well versed in English. So for them, because I'm doing it, I'm teaching in undergraduation and post graduation. It is not the problem for me. When I was a teacher for arts, humanities, where students were not much exposed to English, where I was making use of all such techniques, because I was using some humor, creating some humor along with teaching grammar, because to speak about imperative sentence, to talk about imperative sentence, assertive sentence, interrogative sentence, even assertive, imperative, interrogative, and explanative sentence. So whenever I teach them, I would have I would use some I would use some certain humors to make them interesting, and to make them they should not forget it. That the way, the main intention of my using humor was students should not forget. That is the thing is about. That is what a script writer should have, all certain things when you are writing a script for it. The target audience, that is what thing is about. Next, radio profile. I think radio profile. So what is radio profile? Because when you're talking about the target audience, because who is the target audience? uh, so for this program, who is the target audience? If at all you are giving a more, giving a talk on some, disease, some, heart disease, some, like, what do we say for it, cancers. So who is the target audience? The one who is very much, want to get information about the cancer, about the disease. I mean, they want to get, about the know about the sanitizations, and know more about the health, health tips. They would be the target audience. If at all you are giving, if you are holding a talk on, agriculture, because the farmer would be the target audience. If at all on Women's Day, if you are conducting some radio talk, inviting some woman, the achiever, who is a woman, who is who is the talker, then who would be the talker? Would be the thing. So the much and more listener would be the women, and sometimes men would also be there, but the much and more the audience would be like women. Like, you should know who is the targeted audience. You should have the idea, because when you are writing a script, you should think twice or thrice or quadruple time, and you should think, so whom you are going to write it, this script, so whom you are going to address it, and whom you are going to broadcast this program to them. So that is what you should know, that the radio talk is usually enjoyed in retrospect. That is what, broadly speaking, there are two sets of factors which determine recall. There are subjective factors and objective factors. And talk should be organized keeping these factors in mind. When you are writing a script, you should know what are the subjective factors with which you are going to connect the audience, and objective factors which you are going to connect them practically. Objective means in a practical way, and you should keep it in mind. The subjective factor relate to the mental makeup of the person who has to remember, and the objective factors are the material which has to be remembered, which are the materials, which are the contents, like that, you are supposed to remember. That is what the target audience, you should know it. Then radio profile. Radio profile, you should have the, because the radio profile is usually a talk, feature, or even documentary on a certain person. What is radio profile? Think that I'm a professor in a college. So if at all you want to call as a guest to your radio station, you are supposed to know what the profile of the speaker. The radio profile is usually a talk, feature, magazine, of a documentary on a certain personality. You should know what is the personality. There are no one way doing radio profile, and very often as presentation depends on circumstances. Say for instance, Salman Rushdie. I think is a author of uh, what is that? Which one? The book is I think the Midnight Children something. The book is the distinguished writer wins a Pulitzer Prize for writing. There can be a radio profile of him, so that Indian listeners can get an idea of Salman Rushdie. There are various ways one can go about. If at all you want to hold a radio profile, take it as an example of the very author who is very prestigious, who is a famous author, Salman Rushdie. If you want to conduct a radio talk and profile, you are supposed to explore through many ways and means. So I'll tell you what are the ways and means you are supposed to go about. We may want to interview him as a part of profile. We may. We may want to interview him as a part of profile. If Salman Rushdie is in India, we can make an attempt to get him for a brief interview. Something Salman Rushdie is in India. Now he's staying in India. You're going to meet him, sir. Once you should come to my station. My thing you are supposed to. We plan to interview, sir, because let audience knows your profile. Let no audience knows your what is what things are going in mind, and what how what made you to write the novels, the very particular novel. You could ask all those things. That is what we can make an attempt to get him for the brief interview. We can write a script about him and get him to speak on certain important issues. So you should write a script, you should give it to him, and you should ask him to speak on certain issues. That is what the radio profile. Getting my getting the my dear friend students. That is what getting my point, my dear students. That is what you're supposed to. If that author is in India, if that author is in South Africa, some West Africa, who is a famous author, something Chinuwachibe. I think he's no more. I think so. You are going to invite him to the radio station. You should write a script for him and should give it to him. You should ask him to talk on that issue because things fall apart, which is a wonderful novel. I like it, very most of it. I like it very much. That novel. I know I read it many times. That novel. That is what. The second point, to conduct a radio profile, Salman Rushdie is not in India. He's in England. He's not in South Africa. He's in England has no immediate plans of visiting South Africa and West Africa, something like that. We make a hurried attempt to find out whether any more has ever recorded a conversation. Anywhere, at any point of time, Rashdi's radio talk has been recorded. Our video has been recorded somewhere else. His voice, his interview has been recorded. You should search it out in an archives. If yes, can we have access to it and use it your programs? So you can see that how you are going to assess it, how you are going to make use of that, recorded video, recorded audio, something. Then, and more likely, if it is incorporate excerpts of interest from the archives, in any case, we can have a scripted profile of Rushdie intercut with archival materials. That's what if there are any archives, they have stored the records, the interview, the records, the audio record, the interview audio record of Salman Rushdie. You can pursue it from them. You can make use of. You can broadcast it. The third point is we search high and low for archival materials and discover that no one has ever introduced. Even you have searched it in archives, you ask somebody else, know where you could find out the interview of Rushdie, the interview with Rushdie. Even has been there is no trace of any such materials. We do not want to our program to be straight talk. Why not introduce people who knows Rushdie are familiar with this work? So Salman Rushdie is not in England. He's in somewhere in England. If he's in India, you can invite him. You can go to archives. You can get these things. Or else those who know about Rushdie, those who are very familiarly familiarized with Rushdie and the family members or even his contemporaries, even the novelist who is very much akin to him for several years, who is staying in my place and who has done some research on it, who has published thesis, who has published doctorate thesis on Salman Rushdie. So you can invite such and such people for the radio profile. You can connect an activity. Getting my point, my dear students, because you are supposed to know how programs are to be broadcast, how you are supposed to plan for the radio profile and program on certain, famous personality like. We managed to track down several people who are familiar with Rushdie and his work to have a lot of interesting and they share. We can have a scripted profile and Rushdie incorporate several other speakers because you can invite the who is very much, akin to Rushdie, who can ask him to speak on Rushdie. You should write the script for him also. You should give him and you should tell him the time bound also. That is what. We deserve that are very lucky to have the assistant above, in which case we have scripted commentary, Rashdi himself as well, some archival interviews of Rashdi. Something you can write, you can see the scripted material of Rashdi, where in the archives. That way you can, bring it out resources for command. We can even go to the extent of producing a radio commentary. You can read the scripted materials as a talker, as a you are a talker of the radio. You can make use of the scripted script of Salman Rushdie once he published it on, and he published it on, and you are going to get it to the station. You are going to read it out, read it loudly. That could be also radio profile can be arranged. If you do not have any access any of the above, all is not lost. We can produce a well scripted talk and well both informed and interested. Even you do not get any information from any sources. So then you can write a script on Salman Rushdie on your own by collecting from various sources information. Then you are drafting the script, you are preparing the script, you are conducting a program. That is what radio profile is all about. So when you are conducting and holding a radio profile, there are certain things you are supposed to keep in mind. So what are those things? Research is always most important because you are supposed to research it. You are supposed to research it. Research you should supposed to research is always important because the second point avoid dates and numbers because when you're conducting radio profiles again if you are mentioning the dates because this documentary was done this thing the script was done this audio record was done on the date mentioned if you are mentioned in the year then it will not be useful much useful then dates numbers and technical jargon so nobody is interested in knowing how many articles that just published so who is interested how many articles has published on which day and in which magazine and in what edition? People do not show any interest like how many magazine articles he has published in what journal in what seminars. They never listen to it because you should focus on the point. Your presentation should be informal. I told you already. I've been telling you radio talk should be informal, not much more formal. If the situation demands it should be formal, okay, to some extent it should be formal. But if at all you want to create an interest among the listeners, you're supposed to it's supposed to be like informal, like you're writing. You may be writing about the writer, but there is no need to get into a high flown emotional rhetoric. You are not supposed to make use words, rhetoric words, and high flow of words, emotional, not required. Because writer, thinker, and lost soul in hiding makes a secret owe to himself, not required all such things. Because the listener will not, find interesting because the listener will lose the interest. I mean, the next fourth point is what when you are holding a radio profile, selection is an important part of producing profile. Selection. So, which subject you are going to select for the radio profile is important. So, human beings are multifaceted. It's quite impossible to deal with everything all at once because they are multifaceted. Where each and every individual is different, distinguished from one person to another person. The grasping, knowledge, understanding, perceiving, their character, behavioral patterns, which are very distinct and different from one person to another person. Take one aspect of that person and write about it. Of course, we should acknowledge the existence of other aspects, but do not attempt to deal everything in depth. But don't go in depth always. It's a program. You're not supposed to dig out many things for it. Like you should know the limitations in which to which you're supposed to tailor it. You tailor it, and you should make the program done. An attempt must be made to concretize the abstract to specific examples. When you are saying you should make use of anecdotes and examples come in very handy here because anecdotes. So how the man is that and in very hand an example should give it. So if say for example Peter Brooks was Mahabharat. repeat the symbolism in the Mahabharata, because it's the holy book for Hindus. Where in India, Arjuna is a character who changes constantly. In the end, he is victorious, but not above blame. We watch him increasingly become besmirched with mud and blood from its wounds. That is what we see. This is how you're talking about. You are writing about the very character of Arjuna. The character who changes constantly. In the end, he is victorious, but not above blame. We watch him increasingly become dismissed with mud because he is coming from the war and blood from his wounds. That is the radio profile is about, my dear student. Radio profile is usually talk, feature, magazine, or even documentary on a certain personality. It very oftenly its presentation depends on circumstances. Somewhere the circumstances word is misspelled because CIRQM circumstances. Next, the part is what radio documentary. So radio documentary is what is any feature or program that is based on documents. It's a form of directed towards presenting a factual. It is not a factual, no, a factual, FACTUAL record about real life things and events. It sets out not just to entertain but to explore. Any program that deals with factual information is not documentary because sometimes you cannot call everything is a documentary. That's a documentary is a feature or program that is based on documents because the documents you are collecting, which are evidenced, which are factual, actuals. So it is a form of directed towards presenting a factual record about real life. Somebody, because Salman Rushdie, on him you can make a document, read a document because from his place where he is born, of his parents, and for schools and college, his friends. We can collect some information from the friends and the novels he has written and how his novels made him very much famous. So this is how you can collect the information and factual. You can make the thing famous documentary or something like that. Is what a documentary could therefore be seen to persuade, communicate a message, or just to provide insight. A documentary is what for the why do you hold a documentary in radio? Because it is what to persuade, communicate a message, or just provide insight to the listener. Because there are because you should give him some knowledge, extra knowledge. You should trigger your knowledge. That is what insight. Uh, it may either advocate a solution to a problem or simply articulate a problem. Whatever the incident, the social lens of documentary is immense. That is what documentary is all about. Uh, because documentary strives to influence people's thoughts and action differs from other factual programs and is consequently charged with strong emotional quality because it creates strong emotional quality and sometimes it is this compelling factor that gives documentary sense of the dramatic. It's like a dramatic because it will be narrating somewhere in documenting something. It is not the drama of the make believe, but one that stems from recall life, a drama at your doorstep. So to speak, it is a dramatic also in that adds an artistic purpose of journalistic and sociological aims. That is what radio talk about. I'll tell you an example. Noted filmmaker John Grierson was the first to use the word documentary. I repeat it again, my dear students. Noted filmmaker John Grierson was the first to use the word documentary to describe the creative treatment actuality. So, producers of documentary, whether on radio, television, or film, generally not accept, expect and confront a lot of violent criticism when you are something it's like an autobiography and biography something it's a biography something like a lot of violent criticism something if you are very pro with the very character on which you are dealing people come out with comments how what way you are figured out and picturized him positively like that is what that is because of documentary goes beyond the news broadcast and deals with not just what has happening but also why it is happening. That's documentary specialty is that this documentary can be seen to raise controversies and encourage debate. So that is the point you are supposed to make. Is supposed to be understood by you that the documentary can be seen to raise controversies and encourage debate. In documentaries, the role of the writer and the role of the producer much. The role of the writer and the producer much. The writer must know the process of production well and preferably involved with it because the writer must know the process of production because you should know the linear the sequences of the thing about. Only rarely does a documentary script represent everything appearing on the program. The writer, producer of documentary has to depend greatly on program. I tell you again, the writer, producer of documentary has to depend greatly on program and spontaneous development, sorry, and improvisation in the field. If rigidity is scripted, radio documentary tends to sound staged and is hardly ever very exciting. That is what documentary is all about. The next point is documentary. Noted filmmaker John Grierson was the first to use the word documentary to describe creative treatment of actuality. And the next point is research for the documentary because since writers and producers of documentary deal with facts, they must develop techniques of discovering the facts are. Research depends a great deal on the resources that are available. They should research for the documentary. These are supposed to explore and should know how to get into the things to collect the various information which are connected to the program. Research depends a great deal on the resources that are available. May either be conducted by an individual or by a larger organization. There was a program in my place like Ramesh, Coffee with Ramesh something. That was a program where how the the team of the people were collecting information about a particular person, for a particular personality. How this was they are together, clubbed together, and they were broadcasting it like that is what. Before going out the tape recorder, some basic research must be complete. There are three main sources of research because so when you are researching something, the first thing is library research. Library research means because even I have got a doctorate degree in English. Even first I visited library for my research, just to review my PhD thesis, my sub about my topic. I just visited library at first. That is what if at all you want to conduct a documentary, you're supposed to make a visit library search. This does not just mean a looking of whatever there is in the library, but also that is called fugitive literature. These are mostly unpublished sources. There are within that unpublished services, information available with non-governmental organizations and voluntary agencies working in the area. We should visit NGOs and non-governmental organizations to collect the information. Second is what? Consultation with subject experts. Something you should consult the subject experts, those who are well acquainted with the issues, because those who are very much acquainted with the person and personality, the very issue, you should consult the subject experts. Then one has to make a documentary on a water barrage being built. Therefore, the two subject experts, you are supposed to meet the subject experts. The third is important to conduct location research because you should know where that location is, important here. So it involves visiting the actual location and conducting a first-hand survey of what is happening. First-hand survey because you should visit the location, you should collect the information about the very incident, about the recently happened thing, about the personality who is coming from the place. You should visit the locality. You should get the first-hand information. The second part is that is what the documentary of the narration. What is documentary of the narration? It's a mastery of the art of writing narration because chief among the tools that a writer of documentary needs a mastery. If at all you want to write a script for the documentary, needs the mastery of the art of writing narration. This is, of course, does not mean that a documentary has to have a narration, but it is only the very rare radio documentary that does away with narration completely. In documentaries, the narration should ideally be written after the program has been edited, since it is only Then that the writer knows what material needs narrative support. If the narration is written before the final edited program, it runs the risk of being superfluous and redundant. That is what we should have it. And narration can reinforce the effect of a program in number of ways. Narration can reinforce the effect of a program in number of ways. It can clarify, emphasize, and interpret what else is being said and heard. In providing explanations, the writer must toe the tired line between saying too much and saying too little. That is what documentary narration is what like between saying too much and saying too little. Unnecessary narration not only clutters a documentary, but insults a intelligence of the audience. That is one. Finally, narration may enhance the emotion quality of a taped insert. Narration may enhance as the rules of writing script that we had to talk about there's written in unit 3. That is what. Spoken and not read as literature. It should be a spoken in a format. It should be said it in a spoken format, not read as literature. What is important is that it should sound natural, easy, flowing, spontaneous, or extempore, not like you should well in advance plan. Moreover, the narration should be well integrated into the program and probably written at the very last when one has collected everything else that would be part of the program. That is what uh, the documentary of the narration. I told you, I explained it to you. Then organizing the documentary. What is organizing the documentary? The documentary, since it usually has a specific message to communicate, must be organized in order to clear the effective structure. When you are organizing the documentary, what are the things you are supposed to organize for a documentary? This is what is usually specific, message to communicate must be organized in order to clear and effective structure the sequence of presentation. It's very important. That is what organizing the documentary. The organizing function is what the material should be organized in such a way that it indicates the various relationship between facts and ideas of the program. So when you are organizing for the function, the material should be organized in such a way that it indicates the various relationship between facts and ideas of the program. This pattern linking facts and ideas is the outline of the structure. It lists the ideas of the documentary and separate the major ideas from the subordinate ones. This outline provides the structural foundation on which you base the program you plan. That is what. So I'll tell you again, my dear student, the organization plan of documentary should have several qualities. When you are organizing for a documentary, you should follow certain qualities. The qualities are like simplicity, that should be very simplicity, logical connection, and clarity. I'll repeat it again, my dear student, for your understanding. Simplicity, logical connection, and clarity. Exceptions are always made for exceptional documentaries. A major step to creating a plan with these qualities to make sure that the script is dominated by the overriding thought to which all the other ideas of the program are related. That is what, my dear students, when you are organizing the documentary, you are supposed to follow all such things because you are supposed to collect the materials and it should be well in organized. And also, I told you, you're supposed to make use of like logical connection and clarity and simplicity. That is what. Just a minute. And
Yeah.
developing the ideas.
Okay.
Uh, and developing the ideas, the first step in outlining your materials is determine the basic purpose of your script. So when you are, organizing the documentary, when you are planning for the documentary narration, anything for that matter of fact, the first step in outlining your material is to determine the basic purpose of your script. What is the basic purpose of script? You may want to arouse concern about a specific social problem. That would be one more, one of the reasons. You are as a talker, as a thing, as a documentary designer, or political issue, or convince people to accept an idea, or develop a certain attitude, and convince people to accept an idea because this is what an idea. It would be a very beneficial. It would be helpful for you. This is where you are going to convince the people and develop a certain attitude. reinforce an existing attitude, or motivate your audience to carry out a specific course of action. These are the developing the ideas. You're supposed to plan it out. That is what the purpose of the central idea can be expressed as follows: to convince the audience that capital punishment is wrong. Next, you should write down the main ideas and the supporting ideas and make the relationship very clear. As you write down this material, you should ask, what are the main points of my program? What are the subordinate points? What is clearly the supporting material? The responses to these questions will guide you in setting down the outline. I'll tell you what are the things to establish an organization plan. You should keep the following such certain things in mind. I will read it for you. What are the developing when developing the ideas for the documentary? What are the certain things are you are supposed to follow? First, firstly, you write the outline in complete sentences. Even incomplete sentences are single words, are usually manifestations of vague ideas and muddled feelings. Because you have got some ideas, some vague ideas, you just write it down. Even whether those ideas are in complete sentences, sometimes incomplete, and single words, you just write it down. To establish an organization plan, you should keep the following in mind. Then that is nor will it reveal whether the various ideas in the script are related at all. Sometimes it is not related, it's unrelated to. Restrict the number of main points to a reasonable number. You just see that which are what points, how many number, how many how many points you could make use of it here. Most good programs have no fewer than two main points or no more than five, because you can make use of 2 points or 5 points. How you are going to make use of for our research in PhD, because you can make use of three to 5 to 6 objectives, like, because even we use certain if at all I take authors, any dramatists, any playwrights for my research, I would say select few textbooks of each writers. I mean, because I've done my research on play, drama. Tennessee Williams and Mahesh Dattani. I took few books from Mahesh Dattani. I took few books from Tennessee Williams, 3 to 4 books. That is what you should limit yourself. That is what. Restrict the number of main points to a reasonable number. Most good programs have no fewer than two main points or no more than five. You must check to see that the transitions are done well. You must check to see that the transitions are done well. The ideas must lead to one another and not randomly jump from one to another. Check it out. You must check to see the transitions are done well, how coherently the drafts, the script has been done. The ideas must lead to one another, not randomly jump from one to another. You should see to that. You should plan it out. Avoid the use of compound and multiple idea sentences. You should not, make use of more ideas and compound ideas and multiple ideas. You should use single idea. You should write it on it. So express points as positive statements and not as questions, because you are not supposed to leave it as a question. You are supposed to state it positively. And this is what things. That is how you are supposed to do the things. So that is where I'm doing it. And the rest of it I will do it in the 13th, because I'm a bit tired today. Uh, Madam, hello. So the feature part I'll do it in the next session, because 13th is my scheduled day. I'll do it on that day, because I will speak the remaining part I'll finish it. Then I'll go ahead for the television. Shall I finish it?
Okay, okay, sir. No problem, no problem.
Yeah, that is why I'm a bit tired, because I've been I've
Yes,
been speaking.
continuously talking.
Um,
Sir, if they have any questions, let them be prepared for the next class. If you have any doubts,
yeah,
Mohammed
you can send
Aliu,
it on my WhatsApp number. Also, you can take my number down.
you
You
just
can
note
Yes,
it
yes,
down
yes, yes.
and
Please, yeah, please, ma'am. Also, you
yeah,
can
we will
also
share.
provide your WhatsApp number so that we can add you into the group.
yeah, you can ask my any questions
And
Yeah.
then
related to
the
this.
email ID
I will
Now,
also I
definitely
will
answer.
share it there.
now, please, we need the WhatsApp number of two of you, please.
Yeah, madam. Madam, shall I give it or
Yeah,
madam?
I'll share,
Yes,
sir. Both of the number I will
Yeah,
share with them with
yeah,
the mail.
yes,
And
yeah,
your mail ID also we will share. If they have any questions, they will
yeah.
ask.
Yeah,
yeah,
any
yeah,
questions,
yeah,
related to this, please,
yeah, yeah. No
come
question
for us.
for today. Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, please. Could you? Yeah, yeah. Could, yeah. Could you
Then
please?
class will be there.
Madam?
Saturday, Sunday.
Madam.
Sir, uh, sir
Good.
class
Yeah.
will leave. Mama, don't miss it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
ma'am.
I will
Please.
see that madam. I'll finish it all the thing because next
Yeah.
in the two sessions.
And
Okay.
also, Mama,
Yeah.
tell you
Yeah. No.
we have classes tomorrow, day after tomorrow also. Okay.
Yes. To tomorrow and after tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we
ma'am.
have
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah. As I
Wait.
said, could you please share your WhatsApp numbers now so that we can add you into the group?
No, no. Whatever we have to send, we have to send through mail only. I will share. Okay. Sure, we will share tomorrow all the officials and teachers' number. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Okay. Okay.
We will share.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
For
you, sir.
instance,
Thank
ma'am,
you. Yes.
could you see like my how can I say my dashboard? Yeah, because here,
No?
yeah, now like
Yeah, yeah,
see,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
you can see.
yeah. Can you see DCE one general principles of writing,
Yeah.
DC2 feature writing, but DC3 no, I cannot see DC4. Now I can see DC5.
Okay.
Yeah, DC there is no no DC4 is not there.
Okay, okay. I'll just check. Okay.
Yes, yes.